Joining me now is Cobb, professor of history at the University of Connecticut and contributor to The New Yorker, Kate Nocera of BuzzFeed, Mike Pesca, host of the Slate podcast The Gist, and my buddy Margaret Carlson of Bloomberg View. So let's talk about this. I mean, if the president delays his action on immigration reform after saying he's going to take decisive action, how much of a problem is this going to be?
It's going to be a huge problem on the Hill, especially among the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. They feel like the president has promised and promised and promised and not delivered. And so you're going to hear a lot of stuff, not just from the advocacy groups outside the Hill, but on the Hill as well, criticizing the president.
Although if you think about the long game, let's say, it's likely that they're going to lose the Senate. The Democrats are going to lose the Senate. But what if they lose by one seat? And what if that election came down to 4,000 votes? And what if polling shows that a big, bold declaration on immigration drove 5,000 people to the polls? So perhaps it's smart what the president's doing. I would say that, if he delays action and doesn't animate Republicans in the long term, he might be helping himself more than hurting himself and helping that cause.
Martha, do you agree with that? That it's smart?
I think it is the pragmatic decision to make. And we all know how unfriendly the president is with senators and members of Congress. This is a friendly thing to do to those people running like Senator Mark Pryor in Arkansas and Kay Hagan and others who, first of all, don't want anything to upset the apple cart at this point. You want the status quo. And while as Kate says, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus doesn't like it, they do want a Senate majority. So they'll be, I think, a little bit more, they're going to be upset and they're going to say what they need to say. But I don't think they're going to engineer some kind of backlash.
And July, I know you want to get
Yeah, this is also kind of about President Obama's fundamental cautiousness, though. And I'm not sure how that plays out in the long term. I mean, we think about this time and time again. His presidency has been defined by these attempts to say, oh, well, perhaps there's a deal to be made here. Perhaps if we take the cautious route here. I'm not sure that this is the best route. I think at some point we kind of know what their handwriting on the wall is about immigration and how Congress is going to deal with it. And I think he should probably move in the short term. Right.
If anyone's going to be moved on this issue, I mean, people that support immigration reform are probably already voting for Kay Hagan anyway. They're voting for Mark Pryor anyway. I don't believe that this is going to necessarily move voters, except it'll make Republicans really angry if he does it in the short term, but they're going to be angry kind of no matter what.
Oh, Jonathan, we're the Rick Perry, you don't have a heart caucus over here. I'm all for the Dreamers. I think the public supports it, but you don't want to do it in September when the Senate is in the balance. I still think there's a chance. You said it's gone. I think there's still a chance.
There's a chance,
to keep the majority.
50-something% chance that they'll lose it, but there's a small chance they'll win it. There's only one race where even 10% of the voters, one contested Senate race, are Hispanic. So once you take that off the table, that you're not actually going to be gaining voters, pragmatic, not bold, not visionary, pragmatic.
All right, let's move on to our next story. We'll discuss now. Where?
There's no next.
There's no next.
Let's just stick with this.
Let me talk about this one more time.
Yeah. No, well, actually, I had another question.
We'll get a heart.
Actually, I'd like to take back what I just said.
No. You can't take back what you just said, but I'm going to say what I was going to say. Turning now to a report that the New York Police Department is being investigated for a second restraint-related death. Yesterday, a medical examiner's report cited, quote, physical restraint by police as the cause of death of a man under arrest last month. They ruled the death a homicide. The report also cited heart disease exacerbated by high blood pressure and thickened arteries, as well as obesity as contributing factors in his death. This comes days after New Yorkers marched to protest the death of Eric Garner, who died last month after a chokehold was used in his arrest. Another death ruled a homicide by the medical examiner. There is also this morning. The St. Louis County police officer who made headlines during the Ferguson protests for pushing a CNN anchor live on air and was then suspended after video emerged of him threatening to, quote, kill everybody. Well, he's now retired from the force. The officer, Dan Page, had boasted about being a Jesus-loving killer at a 2010 meeting of the group Oath Keepers.
I don't care whether you're a Christian or not. I personally believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord Savior, but I'm also a killer. I've killed a lot, and if I need to, I'll kill a whole bunch more. If you don't want to get killed, don't show up in front of me. It's that simple.
Oh, boy. All in with Chris Hayes reported Dan Page's retirement last night. He's expected to receive a full pension and benefits, according to police officials. My question to the panel is, are we reaching a new sustained level of awareness of police misconduct?
In what community? In what community? Quite simply, African Americans have known about this for a really long time, and it's almost a question of whether or not people believe. And perhaps because we have, a new kind of surveillance culture with the prevalence of camera phones, that you can now actually have visible evidence of this. But if we think all the way back to Rodney King, we had the visual was like the dawn of this being on video, and we saw what happened to him, and there was not a conviction. So this is almost kind of frustrating to say, like, well, okay, we can show this a dozen times, and people have not come to the conclusion that this is a part of our everyday reality, not just for African Americans, but for the country at large. And so just very quickly about that group he was talking to, I interacted with some of those people, Oath Keepers, while I was there, and they are an organization of ex-military and ex-law enforcement people who believe that, ironically, that the military and the law enforcement communities are not necessarily upholding the constitutional rights of American citizens. So it's a very kind of odd disjuncture, because he's actually typifying, at least the way they explain themselves, he's typifying exactly the problem that they articulate.
Jelani, I'm going to answer your question. What community? I think conservatives and moderates are coming around to this. I mean, I've been on the website of the National Review and the Blaze, and it was funny. After Eric Garner's death, I expected, well, what did he want? He shouldn't have resisted. I didn't see that at all. I saw the sentiment of over-policing. I think the idea, this phrase, over-policing, is now gaining a lot of currency. I should say that the New York City man who you referred to, that death predated Eric Garner. Right. It's the investigation that's going on now. And in the absence of video, we don't know exactly what happened. But I think the thing that came out of Ferguson is not just this anecdotal or this idea, yes, maybe there's over-policing, how do you put your finger on it? All the statistics about the disparities in the population and representation, and, everyone in Ferguson has, an average of 3.5 warrants on them. It's just the sort of thing that does wake up reasonable people, and I think we are seeing some movement on the issue and some changes in opinion.
So this actually makes me think of the whole issue of, in terms of being able to see these things, that it helps with the conversation. And one of the things that come out of Ferguson is that what if, and also here in New York, what if the police were wearing body cameras where people could actually have a record and go back to look? Is that the solution? Or is that something, just a feel-good thing that actually won't work? Well,
there are a lot of cameras that we've learned about that exist in police departments, but they have the capacity to turn them on and off, which I think is the problem. We need cameras that stay on for the things you don't want to have recorded. And this has been so dramatic. That you have senators, Republican senators like Rand Paul, really basing a lot of what they're saying to build a bigger tent on the arrest rate, and as you say, there was 3.5 warrants, and the over-militarization of the police, and it's too bad it takes pictures, but it's an old saw, pictures worth 1,000 words. It really does help for those of us not in the community to see it, to actually see it and know about it. And those pictures out of Ferguson and the Eric Garner chokehold really help bring it home to people.
Margaret, you brought up Rand Paul, Senator Paul, which made me wonder, who else besides Senator Paul in the Republican Party of any kind of stature has said anything either about Ferguson or about over-policing or the militarization of the police since all of this happened? Well,
I think there's a small caucus in the House, on the House side, of libertarian-minded Republicans who've spoken out either on Twitter or their Facebooks about what is going on, and I don't think the issue is necessarily going to go away when Congress comes back in session. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, but there's enough of a kind of coalition of liberals between the Congressional Black Caucus and the Libertarians that actually really want to look at the issue of over-policing. And having Rand Paul as a voice out there, a prominent one, certainly does a lot to keep it up front.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're going to have to take a break. We'll discuss more of the stories making headlines this morning on the other side of this break.